But just to quickly introduce, I think I've probably met most of you, but my name's Grant, and present along with Craig here, and Kieran on the end there as well. So, without further ado guys, we'll get into the model and we'll get started.
Ciao everyone, and welcome to What's New in SolidWorks 2020. I am Gianpaolo Bassi, CEO of SolidWorks. Every year, we hear from thousands of SolidWorks users like you, and we get amazing ideas, insights, and requests for what's next. So of course we listen very closely, and then we deliver. Over this past year, you have told us you want full digital continuity, a seamless process that takes you from design to manufacturing faster than ever. You want the freedom to innovate more, and you want to work with increasingly precise simulation to reduce the risks of product failure. So we got our marching orders, and we acted on them. And we are absolutely thrilled with what's new for 2020. It's all about digitalization and integration through a connected 3D experience platform to drive faster innovation while reducing the risk of failure. In SolidWorks 2020, you'll find three main ways we are giving you the solutions you truly want and need. First, the 3D experience platform will deliver to you a connected design to manufacturing ecosystem, helping you manage every aspect of developing and delivering products, from ideation into the hands of your customers. You'll go from concept to completed product with unprecedented speed, and you'll do it easily and seamlessly with new and connected applications, both on the desktop and the cloud. We are delivering improved performance across the spectrum for stunning speed and unparalleled functionality. And finally, we are giving you streamlined workflows to accelerate time to market and reduce manufacturing costs, all while improving product quality. Get ready to dive in, discover, and get inspired by SolidWorks 2020.
Yeah, so thanks to Gianpaolo there introducing us. And I think what's really great about the SolidWorks software and how it develops over the years is so much of it comes from you guys. You know, you using the software and you giving us feedback, giving SolidWorks feedback to make sort of subsequent releases better and better. I think that's a really good way of going forward. And a lot of what you're going to see today is all customer requested enhancements, which is really good. Alright guys, so every year with these events we focus in on one of our customers' models and we use it throughout the day as the example file set. Last year you may remember we used the telescope, and for the veterans who have came along to a good few of these events now, you may remember the Tracker motorhome that we've done as well. Well, this year's no different. We've got the Micromax abrasive water jet cutter by the company Omax. Now, Omax are an American company, and they're largely considered to be one of the kind of industry leaders in their field. And the way that they've achieved this is by using some of the great tools that we've got built right into SolidWorks now. Now, as I say, we're going to be using their model and a few example file sets as we go through the day. And we can kind of break this morning down into three main sections as a kind of roadmap for you. Helps us sort of judge when we're going to get our next coffee, which is nice. So we can kind of go improve performance, then we're going to go streamlined workflows, and then we're going to have a look and see how the kind of ecosystem surrounding SolidWorks as things change is more connected than ever. So I'm going to open proceedings here by taking a look at how performance has improved for 2020. And where we're going to open on that is by speaking about this, detailing mode. Really nice enhancement that I'm really happy to bring you guys and show you. Just looking around the room here, I can picture some of your drawings and I can see how it's really going to help you out. So detailing mode is effectively, the way I like to think of it, is almost like large design review for drawings. So A couple of years back we introduced this function of large design review, and what it meant was if we had a particularly large assembly, we could open it, manipulate it, add notes, markup comments, all that sort of stuff really quick. It didn't matter how complex or how much was in that assembly, we could get in there and work with it fairly quickly and efficiently. Well, now that functionality's kind of came into the drawn environment, if you can imagine, and that's where this detailing mode comes in. So I'm waffling a bit about it now. Let's just take a look at it. So in this little video that I've prepared, I've got a fairly complex drawing, and we're going to open this up in this new detailing mode. Now with detailing mode, what you're going to find is that all your views and notes and annotations, everything in there are completely attached, and they're still connected to the 3D model. But the actual drawn views don't load the model, therefore they're really efficient, they're really quick to work with, and as you can see, it doesn't matter how complex the views are, how many sheets we've got, or how many configurations are in this. So we can work with it really quick. We can add notes to it. As you can see here, I'm using the new note palette as well, dragging some notes in and dropping it in, company standard type notes. And equally, if I wanted to type those notes in, it's just as quick to do as well. Now, the sheet's starting to become a little bit crowded, and just as you would do with a fully resolved drawing, as you guys are used to, we can manipulate the views, we can reorganize our dimensions, we can delete them, we can edit them. So what I'm getting at here is there is a whole lot of functionality available to you in this detailing view. Any minor edits can be carried out really quick and efficiently. So what we're doing here is we've started a new sheet, again, just as we would if we were using a standard fully resolved drawing, and we can do that. We'll add the new sheet, we can rename it, we can toggle through existing sheets. And what's really nice here, guys, is that any feature you see, either in the toolbar along the top or by clicking on something, if it's not grayed out, then it's available to you. It's not like we try and click something that says, oh, you need to load the drawing in for this. So a really useful tool, and packed full of functionality as well. Now as we go through here, what you'll notice is that we're using revision tables, symbols, we can use clouds, we can use different fonts. Basically all of this is open to us, and we're not going to lose any of the functionality of adding or editing any of our work. And finally, guys, just as you would expect as well, when we do finish this drawing off and we save it out either as a JPEG, a PDF or a TIFF style format, then it doesn't matter how we open it going forward, if we open it fully resolved or if we open it in detailing mode again, or light view, or any of the other modes which are available for drawings now, any notes, anything we've edited whilst in this detailing mode is going to be there and available in that drawing when we reopen it. So that is detailing mode, and the whole focus around that, guys, is if you're using complex assemblies, you're making complex drawings, and you've maybe got some minor design edits or review to do, it's a great function to have. And again, I happen to know this was one which came from what we would call internally an SPR, which is something that went to a development team and they incorporated off the back of a customer request. So really nice to see that. Okay guys, moving forward here, what I'd like to do is rewind a little bit. Last year I actually presented this very functionality that you're looking at. So this is a 2019 feature. You're thinking if he's thrown them in already, must not be much else to show us. But the reason I'm rewinding here, guys, is because this tool that we added, this large design review edit mode, it really moved the game on in terms of what we could do with large assemblies quickly. Using large design review edit mode last year meant that you could add mates to new geometry, you could change configurations, and you could move components around in your assembly. And again, it wasn't loading in all the reference components, so it was really quick to work with. For 2020, again, the game has moved on even further. Now if you're using this large design review edit mode, we can add in different patterns now. So we've got component patterns can be added using this mode. We can add mates to existing geometry as well. You couldn't do that before. So if you brought something new in, you wanted to mate it to something existing, you couldn't do that. Now you can. And then we see this term, delighters. This is one that we've used in this presentation a few times over. It's catchier than saying Not massive, small enhancements, but they make your day-to-day workings all the smoother. And it's really the kind of things you would expect, guys. So copy paste is now supported, drag and drop supported, tab shift tab, which I use a lot for hiding and showing components, is supported in this mode. And we also have access to zoom to selection as well now. So yeah, just really nice little pieces. Now where I'm going to finish up this section, guys, and get us on to another presenter, is with envelopes and external references. Now when it comes to envelopes, this is functionality that we've had in the software for a couple of years now, but again, they're moving the game forward in terms of how you use these and how they really enhance collaboration with different team members. Let me show you with a practical example here. So when we're working on a complex assembly like this Omax water jet cutter, one of the problems is quite often we maybe have multiple team members working on it. Now the current workflow would dictate that you would need to create either duplicates of this assembly and give that off to them, or break the link between two different files, give that off to them, then bring it all back together. Well, by using this new envelope functionality, what we can do is essentially envelope these components. We can create separate sort of batches of them. These batches, in this case, this kind of pipework system that you see, we could pass this off to a colleague, they could do some work on it, finish off whatever they need to do, pass it back to us, and everything comes back seamlessly in our tree, because SolidWorks knows that it's an enveloped component. So the focus here, guys, is being able to work in collaboration with your team members faster and easier. You don't need to create duplicate assemblies, you don't need to bother about the management that comes along with that, which can be tedious and it is difficult at times. So enveloping components is all the more powerful in SolidWorks 2020. So guys, we kind of flew through that one. That was the improved performance section. Now we're going to have a look and see how the workflow is becoming more streamlined than ever with SolidWorks 2020. And with that, we'll go over to Kieran and let him show you.
Now, again, to break this down into some bite-sized chunks, we've broken this down a little bit further, and we're going to have a look at the assembly improvements in the part and then the drawing there. But we'll start off with the assembly ones that we have. Now, for the assembly ones, we do have a good number of them in there. We're going to start off looking at flexible components, and this is actually one of my favourite enhancements that comes with 2020. It really adds a great bit of functionality to your assemblies. But let's see what it's all about. Now, with flexible components in our assemblies, I'm pretty sure most of you by now have commonly used flexible assemblies in order to get movement within your top level assemblies, that sort of idea. But how can we go about doing that for single components, so the likes of any bellows, springs, things like that? How can we go ahead and get that geometry to update with any moving components in our assemblies? Well, that's basically where this feature comes in. But let's take a look at it. Now, to take a look at this one, we've got this section of the Omax water jet. It's just the tilt-a-jet head of it. And the way that it works is it actually rotates round at calculated angles in order to offset the taper of the abrasive water in there. So you can see how the mechanisms come into play at the top level assembly. Now, like we said, in order to get this functionality, we do need to have a number of sub-assemblies in there which are made flexible. But again, how do we go ahead and add in some flexible components? For example, if we go ahead and add in some bellows in this case to protect the moving parts, make sure they're not going to break, anything like that, how can we go ahead and make them flexible? Well, if we go ahead and add those in, what we now have when we select the component is this option to make part flexible. The way that it works is we can go ahead and select the reference that we want to go ahead and update with our assembly. In this case, it'll be the 3D path of the bellow itself. And then what you'll notice when I click OK is that the geometry starts to update. Every time I go ahead and move the assembly after that point, again, the geometry starts to go ahead and update with that. Likewise, we could go ahead and do the exact same for the opposite bellow here. Again, just using the exact same process, making the part flexible and selecting the reference that we want to go ahead and update the geometry. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's live hinges or springs or bellows, anything like that. The opportunities are pretty much endless with this one, guys, and it's a great way of actually starting to visually validate your models when it comes to the top level assemblies. It makes it a lot easier to see. Now, a few additional points when it comes to flexible components. As you saw, we can go ahead and remap those external references, like the 3D path of the bellow itself. But what we also saw there was that multiple instances are actually supported as well. So we went ahead and applied that flexible part to both of those bellows. However, it's still just looking at one individual part in there. It's not going ahead and creating any duplicate files, any duplicate configurations or anything like that. It can simply use one part and update them independently depending on how that geometry changes. The other useful one as well is we can go ahead and control the mass properties in there, because of course as the geometry starts to change, the mass of the component could potentially change along with it, and of course that wouldn't happen in real life. So what we can do is go ahead and set the mass properties of that specific component to simply reflect its rigid state in there. So again, we're not having any change in masses in the top level assembly. And finally, we do also have some custom property support as well. The next little bit is looking at the improvements that we have with our assembly mates, primarily looking at our Quick Mates toolbar here. And we've got a few nice little additions with 2020. That being, we now have the incorporation of our limit mates in the Quick Mates toolbar. Likewise, we also have our slot mate with our position constraints as well. Same as the slot mate, we'll also have the width mate with the constraints as well. A flip alignment pop-up button. And we also have a flip alignment for our width mate in the right mouse button click now, just making it a little bit easier to control. Now, just to see these in action, again, we've got a little example for you here. Now, the Quick Mates toolbar has actually been around in SolidWorks since 2014, and it's a great way of trying to bring your assemblies together, is focusing on the graphics area alone. Now, if we go ahead and look at this example, what we want to do is go ahead and make this washer into place with this slot. Now, with the slot mate on the Quick Mates toolbar, we can go ahead and select it and go ahead and position that about the slot as we want, in this case in the centre. We then want to go ahead and make this bolt into position, and we've long been able to do this with the centre profile mate. But up until this point, we've had no way to flip it without going in and editing that mate. But now with this flip mate alignment pop-up, we can go ahead and do it directly from the graphics area. Then, just like our slot mate, we can then go ahead and add our width mate in here. And again, we can go ahead and control that positioning in there from this constraints drop-down. Now, again, we can go ahead and use this flip mate alignment in order to go ahead and flip that round, because up until now, what we need to do is go ahead and suppress that out, rotate the component round to the right direction, and then unsuppress it again so it suits what we need. And as we mentioned, we also now have that flip alignment in the right menu click as well. Finally, we want to go ahead and add a bit of flexibility to this assembly so we can see how it moves. And from a Quick Mates toolbar, again, we can go ahead and make use of these limit mates here, where we can quickly and easily go ahead and add in our minimum and maximum values, so we can then go ahead and add in the travel of the component that we would expect in real life as well. And again, we can go ahead and check that out just to make sure it's working correctly. So again, with these little additions, it's just adding a few more options in there, making your assemblies come together that little bit quicker, and it's a little bit more user-friendly as well. Next up, we've got our part assemblies. We've got a few little additions here. And instead of explaining all of them, just going to go ahead and jump right into the little example. Now, component patterns are a great way of bringing in multiple components into your assemblies without having to mate them all into position one at a time. And the first mate that we're going to go ahead and look at is the component-driven pattern. Now, with 2020, what we now have is the ability for Hole Wizard holes to detect the orientation when it comes to patterning. Now, up until now, you need to go ahead and create multiple patterns or skip instances, that sort of idea with it. But it now takes into account that orientation, so it makes it that bit quicker again. Just like with our component patterns, we also have some enhancements to our circular and linear component patterns. That being that we can go ahead and control each of those individual instances in there. Now, you may be familiar with this from the part environment, but it's just recently been added to the assembly environment as well. So if we've ever got any of those components which are at irregular spacings, we can go ahead and nice and easily manipulate that within one pattern command instead of multiple. Again, just makes it a bit easier. Lastly, just want to go ahead and have a look at the mirror components pattern. And up until now, we've had the options to go ahead and mirror about the centre of a bounding box, or even the centre of mass in there. However, sometimes it just doesn't get it quite right. Now, with SOLIDWORKS 2020, we also have the ability to mirror using the component origin in there. So if we've ever got any asymmetric components or anything like that, it makes it that little bit easier to go ahead and align it correctly. And as you saw from the little image there, we also have some new positioning toggles at the bottom there, which are more visually appealing to showing the correct orientation. So again, we can now create fewer patterns as they're now a bit more powerful, and we have more control within them as well. The last little section when it comes to assemblies are these little additions at the end. Now, we don't have little videos for them all because, believe it or not, we'd be sat here all day if we did. But what we're going to start off with looking at is this modifying configurations of toolbox components. Now, what I mean by that is we now have a simple right-hand click on any of these toolbox components where we can go ahead and either create a new configuration of it, we can go ahead and swap configuration, or we can even go ahead and suppress out multiple toolbox components at the same time as well, making it a lot easier to go ahead and customise your assemblies from one right mouse button click. The next one down is looking at the reuse of multi-body part explodes. Now, as you know, explodes have been within the part environment for a little while now, but what often happens is you have a multi-body part, you then create the explode view, that's great. We put that part into an assembly, but we actually want to make use of that multi-body part explode that we've already got. Now, up until now, you need to go ahead and create all of that again. However, with SOLIDWORKS 2020, we can now go ahead and, with one check of a box, go ahead and select to bring in this exploded part, or multi-part explode view, and make use of it in an assembly. Again, just saving that little bit of time when we're pulling our assemblies together. And the last little one here is the ability to isolate components or bodies that are interfering with each other. Now, the easiest way to explain this one is with a little demonstration. Now, checking for interference is a great thing within our assemblies, and we're just going to go ahead and do this the usual way that we used to. So we can go ahead and select our assembly, hit calculate on it, and it's just going to go ahead and find any of those interfering components. We can go ahead and select each individual instance of interference, and we can even go ahead and dig down into those components. Nothing new there. But now, with a right mouse button click, we can then go ahead and isolate that interference when we go ahead and click OK. So when I click OK on it, it's then just going to go ahead and single out that interference that we have, so I can then look at those individual components, can then make some judgment calls, is that expected, is it not? Or I can even go ahead and make some geometry changes right here in my graphics area. Again, just makes that functionality a little bit easier. Now, that pretty much sums up the assembly enhancements. Like I said, that flexible components ones at the start, it's definitely one of my favourites in there, and if you ever get a chance to try it out, I'd highly recommend it. But now we're going to go ahead and move on to the enhancements for parts, and I'm going to pass you over to Craig for that.
Alright, thanks there, Kieran. So, where Kieran left off, started with his favourite enhancements for assemblies, I'm actually going to leave my personal favourite in the parts to the end, looking at the structural systems. So I'm going to take you through some of the enhancements to the user interface when we're working with parts, look at some enhancements for both touch-enabled devices and non-touch-enabled devices, and how we can start to add in markups a little bit different, repair some fillets whenever we get some warnings in our tree, that sort of thing. So let's get started looking at the user interface. So the user interface, or UI, in the part environment has had a couple of enhancements just to make that day-to-day use that little bit easier. So let's get started with a quick demonstration. When I'm opening up a file, the file open dialog box is now a little bit wider, so we can see all the file extensions, and you can rearrange to make it that bit easier to try and find the file type you're wanting. And we now have a new mode selector when we're selecting how we want to open our part or assembly, with the quick options just to the side of that are relevant for each of those different modes. Users also quite like to customise their user interface, so now when we're showing and hiding different tabs, there's a new flyout appearing at the top of the screen to see them. Customers also sometimes might wonder when they're new to using SOLIDWORKS what some of the features actually might do. So there's now new previews for a number of the features, but I'll explain that a little bit more in the next slide. We'll show some examples of them. Customers also like to create and use folders in the Feature Manager design tree, and now you can drag multiple contiguous features at the same time into that single folder. When you come to applying a material, sometimes it can be hard to find that exact material, knowing exactly what folder it's in. Is it one of these SolidWorks default materials, or have we created our own custom material? So now I have a new search bar up at the top, so we can first type in a couple of letters for a material and get access to that a little bit quicker. Particularly useful if you're coming to do a simulation, just to make picking that material that little bit quicker. So a couple of enhancements just to the UI side of things, just to improve the user kind of interaction and speed, just allowing you to get to your work that little bit quicker. So I've then got an example of some of those features that have previews, but what they'll do is when you're new to using Solids, if you hover your mouse over a number of the different features, it will start to play a little kind of 5 to 10 second animation showing you what exactly that feature does. So if you maybe came from another CAD software coming over to Solids, you might wonder exactly what is a revolve doing, what's the measure tool used for. It will start to give you previews of them, and it will start to build up and you'll get a bit more familiar with the software as you go from there. Sketching in SolidWorks also has a number of enhancements, both for people with touch-enabled devices and non-touch-enabled devices. So we'll get started with a little demonstration of that. In SolidWorks 2020, it introduces new sketch enhancements. So let's look at some of those enhancements to the sketching. So when we're using a touchscreen device such as this HP ZBook Studio, what we can do is we can quick and easily draw with enhancements we're adding in 2019, this slot, just by drawing it with our mouse. But when we come to add in dimensions, we still had to enter them with a normal keyboard, but now in 2020 we can just use the on-screen keyboard to type in those dimensions, making it that little bit easier. Making edits is easy using the command manager up at the top, and we can kind of customize that as we need to, such as if we're using convert entities, or we could add in things like the ability to quickly access the fillet and chamfer, but we can even get that a little bit easier in 2020 using the new power modify option. So we can quickly trim out material by starting our sketch with a little bit of a squiggle when we're drawing. We can draw a little bit of a curve, a little bit of a straight line over an edge, and that will automatically add in the fillet and chamfer, and we can jump between the two of them as and when needed. Again, we'll start with a little squiggle to remove some material, or if we need to split an entity, we can just draw a little X on top of that sketch entity, and that will split that particular line. So we've now got our shaded contour, and if we start with a double stroke, we can actually create an offset of a particular entity, or if we do over a shaded contour, it will create a contour that we can then use our cut extrude to cut away some of the material that we might need. I'm then going to look at the curvature of the back section of this part using my zebra stripes. And we can see that it doesn't quite line up perfectly. Now when I edit that sketch, we've previously been able to add in things like our tangency or curvature continuous, so our kind of C0, C1 and C2. But now in 2020 we have the option for C3 continuity to make that edge that a little bit smoother. We can see that nice and easily when we show that zebra stripes. But maybe I didn't quite like that change, so I'll hit the kind of undo button a couple of times, and then maybe I might want to hit redo, jump back and forward as I'm making design changes. But in the past, if you hit the undo button, come out of a sketch or come out of a feature, you'll probably have noticed that that redo button's been greyed out. So there's been a number of enhancements to both redo and undo, so you shouldn't lose any of your work when you're jumping back and forward in and out in multiple different features. So that's just some of the enhancements to the sketching environment, just kind of predictive, kind of undo and redo as you might expect. We'll then look at some of the enhancements to markups, where we can now start to create markups in the drawn environment, and we can actually use that with our mouse rather than having to use a pen on a touch-enabled device. So we'll see a little example of that. So markups are a great way to communicate and collaborate directly inside a Solids file. And with Solids 2020, accessing these tools is even easier than before, with its own toolbar up at the top and a command manager tab to go with that. You'll notice while in that touch mode, the icons are now a little bit larger, so it's a little bit easier to hit on the first try. As always, markups are stored on the markups folder on the left of our Feature Manager design tree, and we can quick and easily orientate to the orientation that a particular markup was created, should we need to make any changes to that markup. And we can highlight multiple markups at the same time, and once we're finished we can export that markup to a couple of additional formats. We can now export things like kind of PDF, JPEGs, TIFFs, those sort of things. What we can now do in 2020 as well is create our markups in the drawing environment. Previously it was limited to parts and assemblies. So in the drawing environment we just use that same intuitive interface that we had in parts and assemblies just to start drawing and making changes as and when we need. We can also hide and show particular markups from our feature manager design tree on the left, or from our heads up toolbar we can hide and show all of those markups at the same time. But say we don't have a touchscreen device, now in 2020 we can just use our mouse, pick maybe the colour of the markup that we want to draw, pick the size of our line, and then just draw away with our mouse, making it that bit easier to get markups in there. I've seen a lot of customers when they're sending us kind of drawings, data, maybe all the issues over here, you should probably all use snipping tool in Windows, then maybe stuck into Paint, try and draw on particular bits. Why not now just do it directly inside SolidWorks and export them once you're finished? Makes things that bit easier without having to open up a separate program to do that. So that's enhancements to markups, which I think is something that more and more people are going to start to use because it just makes drawing things that much easier. A lot of customers end up also working with mesh data. So maybe you've got a scan that you've done yourself, or a customer or a client's created a scan and they've sent you some mesh geometry that you've got to then work with in SolidWorks. So with a couple of enhancements to that will help with the performance when you're actually working with it, and then being able to actually directly edit that mesh geometry if you don't want to have to then create a native SolidWorks file. So we might have something like this complex mesh body that was created from a scan of an Arctic 3D space spider, and even with some of the most kind of advanced computers it can be a little bit difficult to work with these. But now in 2020 we can use a new decimate mesh body feature, insert a percentage decrease, and it will decrease the complexity of that mesh without actually losing any of the kind of physical geometry. And we'll see on the right a little preview of the kind of before and after, just to make the performance a little bit better. When we might then want to actually create a native SolidWorks model to go with it, we can now use the new tangent face selection option, and it will allow us to pick up those tangent faces in the middle, allowing us to be able to create an axis in the centre, which we can then start to use for some of our revolved features, which will allow us to create our 3D geometry. Once I've created that 3D geometry, I might want to compare that to the original mesh data. So we can use the new body compare option, select our mesh geometry in the model that I've created, and then we can get a kind of visual heat map of how those two compare with each other, and we can see what maybe faces or features I might actually need to edit slightly. So we can see those sections, particularly in the kind of red and blue, that are standing out that we might want to make a little bit of tweaks. We've just got a kind of 1 or 2 millimeters of a difference between the two of them. So tools like that decimation and body compare just make working with mesh geometry in 2020 more effortless than it was previously. What if we don't want to create our own geometry? What if we want to then just directly edit that mesh geometry that we have? There's a couple of extra tools we've got in there where we don't need to then convert anything previously. So the need to directly edit mesh geometry, such as this STL file, is becoming more and more common with customers. In 2020 it continues to expand on that already rich mesh editing feature set, so we can now apply fillets in the same way we would with a native SolidWorks file, and we can edit that feature to convert that from a fillet to a chamfer or vice versa as we need to. 2020 now supports more advanced editing tools, such as if we want to increase the radius of this particular surface, I can use my familiar surfacing tools, such as creating an offset surface, extending that surface to extend beyond my current model, and using the trim surface operations, selecting the new surface that I just got, my original surface, and then trimming out that middle section, therefore increasing the radius value that I had in there. Sometimes though, working with mesh files and imported bodies, we can have some issues. So using things like that check entities tool, we can find that we've actually got a small hole and a gap down there at the bottom right of my model. So I can use the delete hole option to get rid of that hole. The 2 holes on that right face, we can now use in 2020 the new option for delete and fill inside with mesh geometry, whereas previously we could only delete that hole, we can now automatically have SolidWorks fill in that gap. So it's just a couple of enhancements that were previously available in native solids file that are now available for mesh when we're directly editing them, such as STL files. So Solids 2020 just gives you those more powerful tools that make editing that mesh geometry familiar and easy. What I'll then look at is how we can potentially fix an issue we can have, particularly with things like fillets. So we've probably all seen that once we've created some geometry, we might need to make a change to the model in a kind of previous state, maybe a couple of the features at the start of our model. You'll make that change, looks fine, you'll roll on your feature manager design tree, and you'll notice you've got a couple of warnings in your tree because you've got dangling dimensions, dangling relations, or it's lost a reference, those sort of things. We've probably all seen them. And one of the common ones is with fillets, when you're making changes, it will lose the references of that. So we've got a new option to try and help fix that a bit quicker. So let's take an example of this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open up one of my parts and I'm going to edit how that was originally created. So rather than creating this with a single extrude, I'm going to split it up into an extrude and an extrude cut, just to make it when I'm going to add in multiple configurations of this part that will have more control over both the extrude and the extrude cut. Now we can do that quite nice and easily by using our contour selections, using the same sketch twice, and in my cut extrude, selecting the two contours that I require, gives me the exact same geometry that I require. Won't it fall to the holes, everything looks perfect, but dragging it past the fillet, it's lost the edges, the edge references. Even though the geometry is physically the same, the edge references have all changed, and therefore previously we'd have to manually select all of those edges again. But in 2020 we can now right click and select the option where it will automatically find those missing references, because it knows that the geometry is physically the same, so it knows where those edges should be, and it makes fixing them a little bit easier. So it just saves a bit of time from manually having to find all those references again, which can be a little bit annoying from time to time. Then have a couple of enhancements to surfacing inside SOLIDWORKS 2020. So let's get started with a little demo for this one, straight in there. The cover of this rapid water level control needs a stiffening rib and also a little gap for a warning decal in there. The new design needs more clearance for internal components, so we can use an offset surface for that. But not every surface might offset first time perfectly, and previously that would stop us in our tracks and we'd have to try and fix that issue. But now you can just right click to clear any of those surfaces that would have failed, and we can continue on working with the rest of the surfaces and resolve those other issues as and when they come up when we're making other changes to the model. To finish up the model, I'll start to do some trimming operations to get those other faces tidied up, remove some material in the inside for the warning decal, just pushing that a little bit further so there's more of an offset, and applying a fillet just the way we would normally, just to get rid of those sharp corners from doing the offset. What I then need to do is look at creating a surface thicken, so getting some thickness in that geometry. But previously we could only thicken it in one or direction or the other, but now we've got the option to thicken equally in both directions. So it just makes creating that bit easier, because previously we'd have to do it in one direction and then create a separate feature which can be a bit more complex in the other direction, so we can choose that thickness in the middle, and that finishes off our model, and we've just added a little decal in there for the warning that's required. So that's just some small surfacing enhancements, just make working with surfacing a wee bit easier. We've then come to the big section for parts, and that's the structural systems. So this is actually my favourite enhancement for the part environment, because we can actually end up creating a lot of geometry from very little information. So this whole model you can see on screen is going to be created by just 4 planes, 1 axis, and 2 or 3 sketch points. So there's almost nothing that I've actually created beforehand. We'll end up creating quite a lot of geometry from that. This was in there in 2019, but it's had a lot of enhancements to make it that much easier. So let's get started. Structural systems was introduced, as I said, in 2019, and provides a more flexible method to create weldment structures with or without the need for complex 3D sketches to define all of our members. We'll review some of the capabilities of structural systems as we go through, and also look at a lot of the enhancements that have been made in SOLIDWORKS 2020. In this example, the weldment is defined by just a couple of sketches, an axis and 4 planes. Primary members can be created in a variety of ways, but now we've got an option for point and length member definition, which again has a couple of options for that. Members can now be created between pairs of sketch points or chained together to create a series of members along a chain. And we have a new up to point option, which allows us to create members that converge at a single reference point. The new up to plane option will create all those members finishing at a particular plane, and we can offset that angle using a sketch line if we so require. As introduced in SOLIDWORKS 2019 as well, we had secondary members that can be added in using that new supported plane option. And for these, a different weldment profile is going to be used. Top of these members needs to be aligned a little bit different. So we can just alter that pierce point, get that positioned up with the plane as we require. In Solids 2020, primary and secondary members can now be split during creation. Splitting can be done using dimensions, instance counts, or by selecting a reference such as a face, plane, or another structural member. And for this particular member, we'll maybe rotate it by 90 degrees just to get that orientation correct that we require. So just type in that 90 at the bottom there, get that rotated. When we're finished defining our structural member, the corner management tool will automatically kick in and allows us to define how the corner will be trimmed. For simple corners, we'll define a planar trim with full contact to the intersecting members. For the complex corners, SolidWorks actually does a fantastic job of determining the trim tool as well as the trim order for the intersecting members. And if we hide out this vertical member, we can actually see what a great job SolidWorks has done at trimming those members where they meet. To add in more members, we can create a circular structure using our circular pattern. Previously, we could do this by patterning a body, but now we have the option to pattern the actual structural system, and doing that will actually keep the integrity and all of the smart information from that structural system, which we can then use later on when we start to create additional members. In this example, we're going to then add in a new structural system to define the perimeter members. These are added in using the support plane method between the original structural system that we created and the patterned members, and we'll use the pierce point to align those with the planes, similar to what we did in the last example, keeping everything aligned. Upon exiting of this structural system, the corner management tool will then determine how those corners will be trimmed, and this is where we would have got stuck up previously in 2019, where we were circular pattern the body rather than the structural system. So selecting the structural system to pattern allows us to use those corner tools when we create the second and third members. And then we'll just do that again, circular pattern to get those members added in, and that will finish up our model. So you can see it was nice, quick and easy to create quite a lot of geometry from very little information, and it'll be a lot easier than some of you might have just used the normal SolidWorks weldment tools. You'd have drawn a really complex 3D sketch, all the different tiers, and you could have done it that way, that'll work fine, but it would have taken you a lot longer to get the same end outcome. So that's actually quite a nice enhancement in there in 2020. So that comes to the end of some of the enhancements to the part environment. So what I'm going to do is I'll take you through a couple of enhancements for the drawn environment inside SolidWorks 2020. Now, Grant obviously already mentioned at the start the new detailing mode. That's a great way to quickly open up your drawing and get access to the information quickly. What you can actually do is you can actually pair that with the new graphics pipeline. Now, the graphics pipeline is something that was introduced in 2019, but it was a beta feature and only for assemblies. And the goal of that was to try and make it so that parts or assemblies would open up quicker. And when you're zooming around, particularly really complex assemblies, with maybe thousands of components or tens of thousands, zooming, panning in and out, rotating around our model would be that much smoother. That's now out of the beta stage, and it's also been added into the drawn environment. So when you're zooming in and out of the drawn, the performance should be that much better. And if you pair that with the detailing mode, it can make things much more smoother to go around our drawn. Then got some enhancements to things like when we're starting to customise the scale of our drawn views, adding in our position views, some new dimension types, that sort of thing. The other one that's worth mentioning is the second bottom one. It can be quite handy. Now, normally, once you've created your part in assembly and you create a drawing, when you save your drawing, it will always default to saving in the same location as the part or assembly was saved. Now in 2020, you can specify a default location for all of your drawings. So if you need all of your drawings to be in a specific project folder, you can specify that project folder at the start, and then all your drawings will be saved into that particular folder if you want. In SolidWorks 2018, they added an option where if you're creating any bill of materials or any other tables inside drawings, you could have everything be uppercase. There's now the option where all dimensions and whole callouts can now be made uppercase. Just so if you don't want some dimensions that are uppercase, some lowercase, and you've got a kind of mismatch, you can have everything be kind of block capitals if you want. So I'll then look at a little video we've got of the examples to some other enhancements to drawings. Now, when we've got our drawing, we might want to change the scale of some of those drawn views. And we can easily do that down at the bottom right corner, select our scale that we require, but sometimes we might not have the scale that we use commonly in that particular list. So you can now actually edit that list with a simple text file, and you can customise all the scales that are shown by default. And if you want, save that text file out, give it to your colleagues, and everyone can have access to the same list. If you don't want to edit that text file, you could, as always, open up the sheet properties and manually type it in to each box, get your custom scale. But now in 2020, there's a new option there. We can just click User Defined, and we get straight into just typing our scale that we require, hit enter, and it allows us to create our new custom scale with fewer clicks than it did previously. Whenever we create something like a detail view, SolidWorks will always want to double the scale of our kind of parent drawn view. In 2020, we now have the option of changing that scale while we're doing that on the left in the Feature Manager design tree. We now have a new chain dimension option for selecting our dimensions, so we can select almost like a kind of 0 point, select our references as we go up or along the model, and it will add in each of those dimensions between those points. And we can even add in an overall dimension by right clicking, and if we update or delete or modify one of those other dimensions, it will automatically update that overall dimension or tidy up the other ones. If we want, we can convert that new chain dimension to a base dimension, or vice versa. We can easily jump between the two of them. I've finished this particular drawing sheet. On my other drawing sheet, what I actually have is a part view down at the bottom right. This actually has multiple kind of positions. Maybe we've got kind of casted and machined parts, and we could always create an alternate position view of assemblies previously, but now you can have alternate position views of parts. So if you maybe have a multi-body part that's moving, or you just want to show alternate positions of a particular part, we can now do that in the drawing environment, and then quickly add in a couple of dimensions to show how much variation and movement there might be. So that's a couple of enhancements to the drawing environment, just to make that day-to-day use a little bit easier. Some enhanced performance, allowing you to use those improvements to the drawing. So that's the end of the enhancements to the kind of base part assemblies and drawings inside SolidWorks. What we're going to look at is some of the other parts of SolidWorks, looking at the Streamlined Workflows. And for that, I'll hand it back to Kieran, who will talk us through those.
Thanks for that, Craig. So yeah, just like Craig said, we're going to take a little jump outside of the core SolidWorks package and have a look at some of the other enhancements and some of the other SolidWorks products as well. And for that, it's all coming under this connected ecosystem. Now, while I say we're jumping out the core SolidWorks package, there is one more option that I do want to go through just before we get out of it, which is this 3D Interconnect. Now, this is something that some of you guys may be familiar with already. It's actually been in SolidWorks since 2017. And basically what it allows you to do is bring in any CAD formats which aren't native SolidWorks files without actually any need for any file translation along the way. So it allows you to pull your assemblies together a lot more quickly, and it's easier to pull them together when you're working with different CAD formats. But again, we've got a few little enhancements with SolidWorks 2020. So let's have a look at it. Now, like we said, working with different CAD formats is a critical point when it comes to your assemblies, and we want to try and make this as easy as possible. With SolidWorks 2020, we now have the functionality to finally be able to drag and drop the models directly from Windows File Explorer directly into the graphics area, just like you could with a native SolidWorks file as well. Likewise, with SolidWorks 2020, we also have the capability to work with 3D DWGs, DXFs, and even IFC formats as well. So there's just a few different formats that have been added in to the compatibility with 3D Interconnect. Again, as I mentioned, it just allows you to pull your assemblies together that little bit quicker when you're working with different data types. Now, moving on a little bit from core SolidWorks, we're going to go a little bit different with this one, and we're going to look at 3D printing when it comes to SolidWorks. Now again, we've got some great enhancements in there where we can go ahead and now search in lists when it comes to 3D printing. We can go ahead and generate our slice there, and we can even go ahead and save all this information out to the 3MF format at the end as well. Now, when it comes to 3D printing, one of the first stages that you need to consider is making sure that the component's actually going to fit in your printing envelope. But before we go ahead and do that, we need to select exactly which printer we want to use. Now, what we used to have to do is scroll through this huge list of printers, find the one that you're looking for, and sure enough, you could add it to your favourites. But with SolidWorks 2020, we can go ahead and search for them now instead, and again, still add it to the favourites. Once it's added, we can then go ahead and select them from a simple drop-down, and then we can go ahead and set the component up. And what you'll notice when we go ahead and select the face we want to reference with this envelope, it highlights any geometry outside the envelope in red. You can then get SolidWorks to go ahead and automatically orientate this to get it to fit in. And then we can go ahead and have a look at any face which requires support or any striation was brought in 2019. Or what we can now do is go ahead and generate this slice data in there as well. Again, crucial parts to when it comes to 3D printing. But not only that, we can, once we've generated this information, we can go ahead and save this out to that 3MF format. Now, this 3MF format not only saves the geometry out, but also goes ahead and saves out the materials that you want to use, any appearances that you've applied, along with all of that slice data that we calculated as well. So again, it's carrying a bit of intelligence along the way. Now, if you don't have any 3D printers available to you in your work, why not check out the 3D Marketplace, where you can simply upload the model that you want 3D printing, check what materials that you want to use. You can even make a few little modifications on the fly, whether it be colour changes, anything like that, and then at a click of a button, you can go ahead and get some quotes sent directly to you for where you can get these 3D printed and have the part delivered directly to your door. So again, there's a whole other branch out there if you don't have these capabilities in there in-house. Moving on to SolidWorks MBD. Now, the enhancements with MBD are pretty much making the user interface a bit more user-friendly, essentially, and it makes it a lot easier to pick up if you're picking it up from the start as well. Now, the easiest way to see it is go ahead and jump into it. Now, for anyone who doesn't know what MBD is, it's basically model-based definition. So what we can do is go ahead and include all of our manufacturing data directly into the 3D model, essentially neglecting the need for any 2D drawings in there. Now, all this information is saved in these 3D views in here, or even annotation views. And what we can go ahead and do is actually look at all of these annotations from our feature tree. We can go ahead and select each of these annotations, and I'll go ahead and dynamically highlight those in the graphics area as well, so we can see what exactly relates to what. What we can also do is go ahead and select one of these annotations, and we can even go ahead and hide and show those out there. So we can start to go ahead and customize these views to make them look the exact way that we want. With SolidWorks 2020, we also have a new name convention for these annotations, where it now includes both the feature and the dimension value in there as well. Again, making it a little bit easier to see from the Feature Manager design tree. Finally, up until now, all of these annotations have been sorted by the annotation view, but we can now go ahead and sort these by annotation type as well. So we can now look at either all of our geometric tolerances, datums, notes, surface finishes, and so on. Again, just making it a little bit easier to go ahead and understand what exactly is going on within your model and making it easier to navigate. So again, just allows for that faster adoption of MBD. Moving on from that, we're now looking at SolidWorks CAM, and there's two major enhancements when it comes to SolidWorks CAM with SolidWorks 2020, and that is the introduction of tab cutting, and we also have probing routines. Now, these ones, the videos really do them justice to try and explain it, so we'll have a look at tab cutting to begin with. Now, when it comes to specific components being machined, we need to take real care of attention when it comes to them. For example, this little roof panel, and if we have a look at the 3 discs that are being cut out here, when we go ahead and machine this, we want to ensure that these discs stay attached, because we don't want them coming off, flying away, breaking the machine, damaging the part, anything like that. So with the introduction of this new tab setting, we can go ahead and add in tabs to hold it in place. Now, the user has full control over these tabs, whether it be the lengths of them, thickness, the spacing, or what you can even do is go ahead and modify these tabs independently as well if you want to have different sizes or lengths for different tabs as well. Once the user's got all the tabs set up the exact way that we want, we can then go ahead and just accept those settings in there. And then finally, we can go ahead and regenerate our toolpath. Once we went ahead and generate that, we can go ahead and animate it out. That way you can have full confidence in your manufacturing process making sure it's doing exactly what you would expect it to. Again, just makes it a little bit easier instead of adding all of that information at the post-processing stage. Moving on to the probing routine. Now, again, when it comes to specific components, for example, we're going to have a look at this little housing from the tilt-a-jet in here. We need some really tight tolerancing when it comes to these components. Now, with SolidWorks CAM 2020 and its professional version this time, we have the new incorporation of the probing operations. Now, what this allows you to do is go ahead and select the probe tool from your tool crib. Go ahead and select the surfaces that you want to go ahead and create new references at, and we can go ahead and select those. Once it does that, it'll then go ahead and generate a new reference, so any subsequent operations after that are now working up to this new coordinate reference. Again, making sure that any subsequent operations are working to that tighter tolerance. Likewise, we can then go ahead and regenerate our toolpath, and just like with the tabs, we can go ahead and animate that out, giving us full confidence in what we've set up is what we're trying to achieve. So that pretty much covers the enhancements for CAM 2020. Moving on to Composer. Now, we finally have some great enhancements to Composer, and some of them are much needed. I'm sure you can agree if any of you guys use it at the moment. The main one being, and again, I had the favourites in the assemblies, I've got favourites in this section as well, is this enhancement to finally be able to save those animations out as MP4s. But on top of that, we also have the addition of reusing any named or exploded views in Composer. And we can even go ahead and save out these 360-degree raster or vector images as well. Let's have a look at it. Now, this is a little nozzle from the Omax water jet, and it's essentially been designed in order to minimise any waste when we're going through this machine process. Now, that's essentially a technique or methodology that SolidWorks have been going down with the Composer enhancements, essentially trying to minimise the waste of your time when it comes to some of these operations. So for example, you can see we've got some of these views set up in here. We've even got a few exploded views as well. And these are the exact views that I want to reuse when it comes to creating my Composer animation. So if we jump into Composer, I'm going to go ahead and open up my model. And what you'll notice is we now have this option to go ahead and import these exploded views and 3D views. Again, saving the time from recreating them. You can then go ahead and simply drag and drop them onto my timeline, and before you know it, you've got a little animation all ready to go. Once we've got it set up, we can then go ahead and save that out, and like we saw, we now have that new MP4 format in there. Lastly, for this component, I want to go ahead and save an image out for this, and I'm going to use it for a bit of marketing material, but I'm not 100% sure on the angle that I want for it. So what we can now do is go ahead and save out this 360 raster or vector image, and what it does is essentially saves out images at multiple angles. So what you can then do is go ahead and flick through them and see which one you think's best. Again, making it quicker and easier to make these decisions instead of having to set up each of these views individually. So again, principle behind it, eliminate waste by creating technical publication. Essentially, it's not wasting your time. Now, that leads us on nicely to one of our guests up here. I'm just going to get Gordon up to have a little session on SolidCAM.
My name's Gordon Drysdale, and I'm from SolidCAM. I want to talk to you about SolidCAM today. It's a fully integrated CADCAM package for SolidWorks. The basis of that means you never actually leave SolidWorks. It's been around since 1984. We're now selling in 50 countries. When we first started, we did our own CAD system because SolidWorks didn't exist then. As SolidWorks became available in the late 90s, we developed an interface to it. And by 2003, we became a gold partner. I think we were pretty well one of the first gold partners. Gold partnership means it's the highest level of integration you have inside of SolidWorks. So, you're working inside SolidWorks. It makes it easy to learn and use because you're sharing the SolidWorks tools that you already know. You never actually leave SolidWorks, so it's the same interface all the time. Just add one more tab to the window down there, you see. So there's no data translation. So basically you design the model without leaving SolidWorks, you continue on, add your toolpath to that. So there's no conversion errors, no missing data. If you make then a model change, let's say the design department is different to the production department, they make a model change, that comes down to you, SolidCAM recognises that model's changed and says, would you like to update toolpath? Done. Obviously, because you're working inside SolidWorks, you've got all the standards there for importing other CAD models. So the modules itself, we've got 2.5D milling, which is basically holes, slots, pockets, facing operations. 3D milling, which is more surface type work. Multi-axis milling, simultaneous 5-axis, where you've got the head and the table moving simultaneously to machine a complex part. Turning, mill turn, and our latest module is the Swiss type, which I'll show you in a little while. Our biggest USP is working inside SolidWorks. But our biggest manufacturing USP is the iron machining module. Iron machining is basically fast metal removal. And how we can achieve that is that traditionally, if you can't see this part from here, but when you're machining parts with intricate corners, typically you will go in with a small tool and you would machine it in small depths so you don't bury the tool and break it. What iron machining does is you tell it the maximum angle of cut, i.e. let's say 45 degrees, that tool would never over-engage, so it would morph its way into the corner. That enables you to cut deeper, which means you're cutting faster. So there's two versions of it. 2D iron machining, which is basically slots, things like that. And then you've got 3D iron machining. Typically with 3D machining, you tend to start from the top and you slice it down. 3D iron machining goes to the bottom first and removes the bulk of the material. Again, it means it's cutting it much, much faster. So this is our technology centre in South Yorkshire. You may ask, why do we have a technology centre when we sell software? We make some fairly bold claims about iron machining. We say it is the fastest metal removing CAM package on the marketplace. If I just tell you that, you perhaps wouldn't believe it. But if I bring you down to the centre and show it to you, then you'll believe it. So we hold regular seminars in the centre, and we basically show people the software. We have partners there working with tooling, work holding, coolant, all manner of things associating the manufacturing process. And we have like mini exhibitions at the same time, but also we have hands-on for all the software so people can play around with SolidCAM and have a look how it works. So as I said, we've got the iron machining, which we're going to show a little video in a second. So there's 2D version, so you see there, all the chips are all exactly the same. It maintains a chip thickness all the way around it. 3D iron machining, it's gone to the bottom first and works its way back up again. I have some more videos out there if you want to come and have a look at them. So this is a part we actually machined last week, which is this particular part. So this is what the user would see as the simulation, and obviously that's the view of it inside being machined. So it's not aluminium, it's EN24, so it's a fairly hard material. And you see that tool is being cut at full depth. The benefit of cutting at full depth means that you're not just cutting with the tip of the tool, it means that the tool is using the full float length, therefore the tool lasts a lot longer as well. I think it cuts this particular side in about 10 minutes, which is fairly quick for a part of that conflict. Deburring it. Okay, so now we're in Op 2, which is this side, which is a bit more complicated. So there's no shock to the tool. There's no additional load to the machine either. again, you can see it cutting at full length. Now how it does that is that we have a wizard within iron machining. And it needs 3 pieces of information. It's to know the spindle power, the material you're cutting, and the tool material. Once it knows those 3, it works out the speeds and feeds, and it adapts them all the time. So it's not a constant speed and feed, it's adapting it all the time. See, we're out the corner there now, and it's morphing its way in there at full depth. You did that with a standard cutting path, it would break the tool, or you'd have to cut it in smaller depths. And there's your part. This is our latest module, which is the Swiss type. Basically, it's sliding head machines, which are very complicated machines, typically for medical type parts. This one's on a star machine. The concept is that you've got tools coming from all different angles, cutting different sections. So there's the machine simulation. So we would have the whole machine modelled up inside SolidCAM. So you can see all the kinematics of the machine movement and all the channel movement. And then the final one. This one just actually proves the fact that Germans do have sense of humour.